They tell me your words work miracles. Show me one. The old man says, I don't do miracles. I only know one name. So they lock him in a cell and tell him to think about it. And he asks the guard for one thing. Not food, not a lawyer, ink. What he wrote on that floor is recited by more people every single morning than any poem in any language on earth. 40 lines. That's it. But to understand why 40 lines were enough, you have to know what they cost him. Before we go back to that cell, if you like stories about the people history almost didn't write down, subscribe to Kathavana. It helps more than you'd think. Rajapur. 16th century. A baby is born and he does something different immediately. He doesn't cry. His first sound is a name, Ram. So they call him Rambola, the one who said Ram. And you'd think a village would call that a blessing. They call it a curse. Wrong stars, wrong hour, bad child. Within days, both parents are dead, and the village has its proof. A servant woman named Chuniya takes him. Nobody else will. She raises him for 5 years. Then she dies too, 5 years old, begging in doorways, sleeping at the back of temples where nobody is looking. Remember that. Nobody looks at the back of the room. A wandering monk named Narharidas finds him, feeds him, renames him Tulsidas, and teaches him one story until it's welded to his bones. The story of Ram. He grows into a scholar, and then he falls in love catastrophically like a normal human being. Ratnavali. They marry. He cannot be away from her for a single day. So when she visits her parents without telling him, he goes after her at night, in a storm. He crosses a flooded river, holding on to something floating in the dark. He climbs her father's wall on a rope hanging from the window. He gets in, soaked, filthy, proud of himself. And she looks at him. And she says the sentence that ends his entire life. If you loved Ram half as much as you love this bag of flesh and bone, you would already be free. He doesn't argue. He doesn't beg. He turns around, walks out into the rain, and never sees her again. He walks to Varanasi and starts telling the Ram story out loud on the riverbank steps. To nobody, then to 5 people, then to 500. And every single day one man arrives before anyone else and leaves after everyone else. Old, sick, sores on his skin, sitting at the back where the crowd doesn't have to look at him. Nobody notices him. Nobody except the man who spent 5 years being exactly that. Nobody looks at the back of the room. One evening, Tulsidas follows him and grabs his feet and won't let go. Nobody in this city loves that story the way you love it. Nobody. Tell me who you are? Hanuman, the one who crossed an ocean for Ram and never once asked for credit. The one who has been sitting at the back of every telling of this story, in every village, for as long as it's been told. Tulsidas asks for one thing. Let me see him. Let me see Ram. And Hanuman says, Chitrakut, go and wait. So he goes and he waits. Days. One morning, 2 princes ride past and ask him for directions. He points, goes back to his chandan, his sandalwood paste. Hanuman appears behind him. That was him. That was Ram. He asked you a question and you gave him directions. He waited his whole life. He looked straight at it. He didn't see it. I'm the greatest fool who ever lived. Tomorrow? The next morning, a child comes and asks, Baba, some chandan? He grinds it. He offers it. And the child takes it and puts the mark on Tulsidas's forehead. Chitrakut ke ghat par, bahi santan ki bheed. Tulsidas chandan ghisain. Tilakrat Raghubir. On the banks of Chitrakut, the saints gathered. Tulsidas ground the sandalwood and Raghubir, Ram himself, made the mark. He wrote that down. It's the only time he ever bragged. Then he commits the crime. The Ramayana already existed. in Sanskrit, the language of priests, locked behind an education almost nobody was allowed to have. Tulsidas writes it again in Awadhi, the language people actually spoke. Farmers, weavers, women, children. He calls it the Ramchrit Mans. The scholars are furious. God in a peasant tongue. The story goes that they locked the manuscript in the Vishwanath temple overnight, at the very bottom of a stack of the holiest Sanskrit texts they had. Let God sort it out. In the morning, it was on top. Within one generation, it didn't matter what the scholars called it. Entire villages knew it by heart and not one of them could read. Which brings us back to the cell. An old man, a demand for a miracle, a refusal, a locked door, and a little ink. He doesn't write to the emperor, he writes to the man at the back of the room. Buddhihin tanu janike sumiron pavan kumar. Bal buddhi vidya dehu mohin harhu kles bikar. Listen to how he opens it. Knowing myself to be without intelligence, I call on Pavan Kumar, the son of the wind. 50 years after, he sat in a forest and failed to recognize God walking past him. He still starts by calling himself a fool. 40 verses, Chalis, 40. The Hanuman Chalisa, no throne, no army, no miracle. One overlooked man writing to another. And then, the story says, the monkeys came. Every version ends the same way. A fort overrun, an emperor rattled, a cell door opened before sunrise. Sankat katai mitai sab pira. Jo sumre Hanumat balbira, the sankat breaks, the pain lifts. Sankat crisis, the same word he later built a temple around, Sankat Mochan. The one who breaks the crisis. He walks out with a piece of paper. The emperor keeps the empire. Tulsidas keeps the 40 lines. That empire is a chapter in a textbook now. Those 40 lines are said out loud every morning. In temples, in traffic, in hospital corridors, in the dark, by millions of people who never learned to read a word. An orphan the village called cursed. A husband told his love was worthless. A poet told his language wasn't good enough for God. A man who waited his entire life for one glimpse and looked straight past it. He never fixed any of that. He just wrote it down. And he made sure it belonged to the people nobody looks at. Nobody looks at the back of the room. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and join us for more tales from Kathavana. Stories that outlive time.